Hi guys. Here I am again with another episode of Three Good Things. This is like, as you guys have been watching, this is like sort of my natural reaction to negativity is to try to, try to find some positivity to counteract that. And also, because I'm just sort of not out on the road, not doing my usual thing where, I'm at conferences and book events and all of that, I really miss my friends and my author pals. And so this is sort of my way to just kind of connect with them and have them connect with you as well. So today is a huge thrill. Tess Gerritsen is, who doesn't know who Tess Gerritsen is? She is like a blockbuster bestseller. I am a longtime devoted fan of her work. And I'm super excited to have Tess with us today. Her most recent book, Shape of Night, is just out in paperback. Is that right, Tess?
Right.
Yes. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and then we'll talk about a little bit of your Three Good Things. But thank you so very much for being here and hanging out with me today.
Well, thank you for bringing positivity to a very strange year. 2020 is a year for all years. So yeah, just really briefly, Shape of Night. It's a complete departure for me. It is my riff on the old Gothic novel, and ghost story. And it's just about a woman who moves to Maine because she's done something very bad, and she wants to hide out. And she ends up renting a sea captain's house.
Okay.
And the ghost of the sea captain is still there. So it's a love story,
never
ghost
a good
story,
thing, never a good thing.
Murder mystery, all these things together. Yeah.
Well, I remember, so we talked a long time ago when you had written Playing with Fire, which is one of my favorite of your novels, although it's very hard to pick a favorite, but that's one of my favorites of yours. And I love the way, because you're a scientist, you're a doctor, and we had a little bit of a conversation about how you had this like curiosity about, what if, like in terms of thinking about the supernatural. I do often sort of wade into that area myself, like mainly from a Jungian idea of like, supernatural being like, beyond what is normal. We only know what 3% of our brains do, right? So as I see it, there are like more questions than answers. So that's why I was so fascinated to see this sort of, exploration of the Gothic novel and the themes in Shape of Night.
Well, you're right. I actually believe in science. I'm a very logical person, but I think we all have this curiosity about the things that we can't explain. I mean, my mother saw ghosts as a child. So she was firmly, she told me that there are spirits all around us. I'm just blind to them.
Right.
It's maybe because that's my problem. I have a logical mind, but it means that all my life I've been looking for ghosts. I've never seen one. I'd be interested in seeing one, but I wanted to explore, well, maybe they're there, maybe they're not. And the fun thing about being a novelist is that you can play with reality so that by the time the book is over, your readers may or may not understand what really happened. Was it a ghost or was it this unreliable narrator? And I love books that leave the interpretation open to whoever's reading.
Yes, I love that too. That's one of my favorite things as a reader and as a writer, to just sort of, dwell in that space of like, okay, what do I think happened? What does the writer think happened? So that's very, that's exciting. So that's, if you have not read Shape of Night, then readers, you must.
Make up your mind. Right? Make up your own mind.
Read it and then let us know what you think happened. My readers are very familiar with that.
I know, especially your book. Sometimes I'll get to the end of your books and go, what did I just read? It was great, but what did I just read?
Yeah, I kind of like that. That's sort of my thing. Like we're always going to get to an end space, but I feel like so much of the work is has to do also with the reader, what the reader brings to the reader brings to the story. So I kind of really love that relationship with the reader and how they might have ideas and they write to you about, I have an idea about what happened, and you're like, maybe.
Yes, that's the thing. I think your books in particular require a super intelligent reader. I mean, I think the readers have, as opposed to books that lay it all out, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. It's great as a reader who is seeking something a little deeper, to find a book like that, and it challenges them and it makes us think as readers. So that's the kind of story I love.
Yeah, thank you. So, and me too. And I feel like, for me, there's like a balance to be walked, right, between, explaining everything and then going beyond that point where you're almost like underestimating your reader. It's like, I don't want to, like I hope that, the people that, that read are, sort of on that same wavelength with me. So, and usually they are. I think our readers are very, very smart people.
We're writing for ourselves, right?
Yes, exactly. I'm writing for you. I know you're really smart. I know you're gonna get it. So,
or not.
You will. So, I've been thinking this time has been really challenging for everybody, but, for writers, I think, we're kind of in a unique position because, we're kind of half hermits to begin with, I think you have to be an introvert to be a writer to a certain degree. And for me, I know writing is kind of like an escape hatch, right? It's where I go to sort of metabolize stress and, fear and questions I have about the world and stuff. So, and the same is true, of course, for reading. So is there anything that you're reading right now that's kind of, blowing your mind, or, is there something that you kind of go back to again and again when you need comfort or inspiration?
I go back to this one author, and he's a nonfiction writer, and his name is Michael Pollan. Now, Eddie, there's something. Well, see, I'm not only a gardener. I'm also, I love to cook, and he combines the best of both worlds in the kind of books he writes. He writes about cooking, he writes about plants, he writes about botany, and somehow he brings them all together. So the book that I always recommend for people who have not read Michael Pollan is to go back to his masterpiece called The Botany of Desire.
Yes, I love that. It's one of my all-time favorite books.
Yeah, and so he just talks about 4 different plants, and how they have affected human history and how humans and the plants have actually interacted with each other. For instance, the apple. I did not know the history of the apple in America. Who was Johnny Appleseed? And how have apples changed because of how we have changed them, and also how have apples changed us? So it's that kind of an exploration, this deep dive into a crop that we just eat without thinking about it.
Right. Yeah, that's what I love about his work so much, is that it actually just forces you to think about like the most mundane thing, like something that you would never have even, considered. And then all of a sudden it takes on this tremendous, like sort of cultural and historical meaning.
Yeah. And we think of ourselves as being in control of nature.
Right.
When in fact, nature is actually using us. So in his follow-up book, The Omnivore's Dilemma, he talks about corn, and we think, oh, we plant corn, right? We eat corn, but it turns out that corn is our master.
It is.
That corn, we have changed corn in such a way that corn has come to control us in every aspect of our lives. And so there's this symbiosis between people and plants that I don't really think about until I read a Michael Pollan book.
Right. Yeah, it's really super fascinating. And I love, anything that explores like the interconnection between, plants and humans and species. And one of the things from the Botany of Desire that really stayed with me was how he talked about, at the very beginning, he talks about, the wolf versus the dog, the lion versus the cat. So he was like saying how everybody's like got this like sort of fantasy love affair with these animals, like the lone wolf and the lion or whatever. Nobody's really thinking about, like the beloved, cats and dogs in our lives, and that those are actually the successful species. because they have made themselves sort of, you know, integral to our lives. I mean, they're like, they sleep in our bed, they they like share every moment of our lives. Meanwhile, the lions and the wolves are being like pushed to the brink of extinction because they couldn't make their relationship with us work, or we couldn't make our relationship with them work. And I thought that was such a fascinating way to think about it.
Well, the fascinating thing is the idea that cats have actually caused us to evolve, to become their servants. So now we put things in cans and we open up cans for them.
Exactly. I know, it's amazing. I had never thought about it that way, and it was so like right there in front of you, and you were like, oh my God, I'm like a slave to my dog, basically. Like you know, like I take him to the spa and like
okay,
and like pick up.
You were really domesticated, yeah.
I really am. Labradoodles are very successful as a species. They're amazingly successful. Yeah, so that's a great read. And I do read a lot of nonfiction. I know you do as well, because it really informs, you know, that type of thinking really informs my fiction.
Yeah, I think it does. And you never know when you read some kind of a nonfiction, some kind of a fact, and it will exactly come up later on in a novel that you write without even thinking about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and most of us who, you know, because writers, we're in love with story. You know, I've said this about 1 million times on this episode, like on the show, that like we fall in love with story in the pages of somebody else's book. You know, that's what we do, you know, as kids usually. But we're also like just great consumers of story, and you know, a lot of us are watching as well, you know, television and film. So is there anything that you're watching right now that really is sort of transporting you, or is, you know, go back to?
In general, during COVID, I'm falling back onto the comfort of old English mystery TV series.
Yeah.
And, you know, like Father Brown and Midsummer Mysteries. And I picked up on this, it's actually an English television show that's set in the Caribbean called Death in Paradise. But they all have something in common, and that is a core group of characters that you fall in love with.
Right.
And the mysteries don't matter. You just want to see what's happening to the people. And particularly with something like Father Brown, it's just that you fall in love with this wonderful priest, and you want to know what happens next in his life. So that's my comfort. But the one movie I come back to again and again, and I watch it every New Year's Eve because it's become kind of one of these rituals for me. And it comes out of the fact that I was an old Star Trek fan. I mean, I grew up on Star Trek.
Yeah, me too.
And the movie is called A Galaxy Quest, and I'm sure people watching this know about the movie Galaxy Quest. It is a gentle send up of people like me. It's about a group of fans who are crazy about this TV show called Galaxy Quest, which is kind of like Star Trek. And then the real aliens show up on Earth, really needing the help of this fictional team, which they believe is real, because they believe these TV shows are historical documents. So it's
I remember.
Anyway, it stars in Tim Allen in one of his best roles ever.
Right.
It's about the incomparable Alan Rickman playing. He is such a big part of this movie, and I love it, not just because I'm a Star Trek person, but also because it makes fun of us while it still respects us, for those of us who are fans.
That's so important.
Yes.
That is really important. Yeah, Galaxy Quest. I had completely forgotten about that movie. I think that might be one. I think I'm gonna watch that with Ocean, because I have a feeling she's gonna absolutely love that, because she has the same kind of like goofy sense of humor that Jeff and I have, and so we were like sort of always like we're always like subjecting her to these like sort of movies that, you know, we love, and usually she loves them too. Sometimes I think she, you know, maybe is just taking pity on us, or she's laughing just because we're laughing so hard, but I think she would really enjoy.
Well, you have to watch this just for Alan Rickman's performance.
Okay, perfect. That is definitely on the to watch list for sure. Yeah, so I was also wondering about on my three good things. So most of us are also nourishing ourselves, you know, cooking more than we've ever cooked before. You know, there's really not a lot of you know, outings at restaurants and all of that these days. So most of us are cooking like all the time. I mean, I know we as a family are, you know, we're basically cooking 3 meals a day, which is a whole new enterprise. But is there anything, so in your family, who's the cook? And, you know, is there, or do you all cook together? Is there anything that you, is like your go-to meal or comfort meal?
Well, I'm primarily the cook, and I always have been.
Mm-hmm.
But I was thinking about comfort meals when our family was all gathered here not that long ago with the grandkids. And what is it? I asked my sons, "Do you remember? You know, that you really love?" And it gets back to my Chinese roots.
Yeah.
So my mother used to cook what we would call a Chinese version of sukiyaki. It's a hot pot.
Oh.
And you have this electric, you know, pot in front of you, which is constantly bubbling. And
Right.
you dip meat. Usually it's sliced chicken and tofu. And I like to put in sea scallops.
Mm-hmm.
And vegetables, usually spinach or Napa cabbage, and you just dip it in and you eat it with a bowl of rice. Now, it just sounds like chicken soup when you're finished, but what really makes the difference, and this is my mother's secret, is the sauce that you dip it into after you pull the meat out of the broth. And it's a combination of hot chili oil, which I make myself with crushed chili peppers, with soy sauce, some vinegar, a little bit of Worcestershire sauce, and sesame oil and chopped green onions. And it's as spicy as you want to make it, depending on how much chili oil you put in.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Oops, I think we have a little bit of a lag.
That has been bubbling with all these ingredients. It's very rich.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And I actually, not last year, but the year before last, we were in Beijing and Shanghai, and we had the opportunity to have that several times, and it was amazing. It was such a great dish.
Yeah, and it really varies depending on your family. So if it's you know, if everybody is older, you can make the pot really, really spicy. But if you have a 3-year-old, it's very mild, and everybody just spices up their own particular serving.
Yeah, that's perfect. That sounds so great. This is one of the things I love the most about this show. Is that I have been able to get so many amazing recipes from my friends and so many ideas about, you know, meals, stuff like that. So that's been really exciting. So Tess, what are you working on right now? What's up next for you?
I'm working on the next Rizzoli and Isles novel, number 13. You know, I tend to go off the series every so often because I get an idea for something completely different. But anyway, I'm back to the series. It's called Mrs. Rizzoli, and it brings in a more active role for Jane's mother. Now, what is it like to have a daughter who's a homicide detective, who treats you like, you know, your mom and you just mom, but what if you're pretty smart yourself? So I love the idea of Angela Rizzoli seeing things in her neighborhood and nobody's really listening to her because she's just mom. And what it's like to be a middle-aged woman who's discounted. I find that I'm paying a lot more attention to characters who are older, who are seasoned, and somehow in this society are no longer valued. And that's why I want to deal with Jane's mom this time around.
That sounds fantastic. I'm sure your legion of fans are, including me. I can't wait to read it. And thank you so much for joining me and being a part of this. And I think is it just tessgerritsen.com? Is that your?
Yes, that's it. That's it.
tessgerritsen.com. Everything you ever wanted to know about Tess, and I'm Lisa Unger, and lisaunger.com. You already know everything you want to know about me, but if you want to know more, that that would be the place to check it out. Thank you for joining me for 3 Good Things. Thanks, Tess, so much. I appreciate it.
And thank you, Lisa. This is fun.